The workshop had been quiet for 11 days, not the peaceful kind of quiet that comes when a man finally puts down his tools after 40 years and lets himself breathe. This was a different silence, the kind that settles into the walls of a house when the person who built it realizes he may have built the wrong thing. I sat in my old leather chair by the window, looking out at the snow that had started falling over Millbrook, Ohio, and I held a phone in my hand that had not rung in 3 weeks. My name is Robert Calloway. I am 68 years old. For 39 years, I worked as a structural engineer, and the last 22 of those years, I ran my own firm, Calloway and Associates, out of a 2-story brick building on Henderson Avenue. We built bridges, schools, municipal water systems across 4 counties. At our peak, I had 27 employees and contracts worth more than I had ever dreamed of when I was a young man sketching load calculations on napkins in a rented apartment. I also have 3 children. My oldest is my son, Daniel. He is 41 years old and lives in a glass and steel condo in Chicago. He is an architect, a genuinely talented one. I will say that honestly, and his firm has been featured in 2 national magazines. He drives a car that costs more than my father earned in a decade. He calls me on my birthday, sometimes. My middle child is my daughter, Christine. She is 38 and works as a regional director for a marketing company headquartered in Atlanta. She manages a team of 30 people, flies business class, and takes vacations in places I have to look up on a map. She is sharp and ambitious, and when she was 17, she told me she would never live a small life. She was right. She sends me a gift card at Christmas. My youngest is my son, Marcus. He is 34 and lives 20 minutes from me, in a 2-bedroom house in Grover Falls with his wife, Patty, and their 2 kids, my grandchildren, Owen, who is 7, and little Rose, who just turned 5. Marcus runs a plumbing business. Just him and 1 part-time helper named Gil. His truck has 140,000 miles on it. His house needs a new roof. He calls me on Tuesdays because that was the day I used to pick up the kids from school when they were young, and he never forgot it. I want to tell you that what I did came from wisdom, that I had thought it through carefully, and that my motives were entirely pure. But if I am being honest, and I have decided that the only thing left to be at 68 is honest, part of it came from fear. And part of it came from a question I had been afraid to ask for years. The question was simple. If I had nothing, who would I be to them? My financial advisor, a careful man named Gerald Price, had told me 6 months earlier that despite everything the slow years after my wife passed, the restructuring of the firm, the sale of our largest contracts, I still had just over $4 million in assets. The firm itself, though I had stepped back from day-to-day operations, was still worth something. The lake house in Millbrook was paid off. There were retirement accounts, a portfolio, and a life insurance policy that had matured. Daniel knew some of this. Christine had asked me once, directly, what the estate looked like. I told her it was being managed. Marcus had never asked. On a Wednesday in early December, I called Gerald, and I told him what I wanted to do. He was quiet for a long moment. "Robert," he said finally, "you understand what you're asking." "I understand it perfectly," I said. He helped me set it up. Not the deception part that was mine alone, but the legal framework, a new will, properly executed, locked in his office. A letter to be opened only at the right moment, and a story carefully constructed that I would have to live inside for as long as it took. The story was this. Calloway and Associates had suffered a catastrophic breach of contract lawsuit. A municipal project in Canton had failed inspection, and though the technical fault lay with a subcontractor, my firm's name was on the original plans. The insurance had not covered the full judgment. Combined with penalties, back taxes on an audit I had mishandled, and a lender calling in a line of credit, I had lost nearly everything in the space of 60 days. The firm was dissolved. The lake house would have to be sold. What little remained would go to legal fees. It was plausible. It was the kind of thing that happened to men like me. I had watched it happen to 2 colleagues over the years. The details were specific enough to survive a phone call, general enough that no one would ask for documentation. I called Daniel first. I had rehearsed what I would say. I sat in the leather chair with the snow falling outside, and I dialed his number, and when he answered, I could hear music in the background, something modern and expensive sounding, and the clink of what I imagined was a wine glass. "Dad," he said, warmly enough. "What's up?" I told him. I kept my voice steady but allowed it to crack once, near the end, when I mentioned having to liquidate the lake house. The crack was not entirely performance. The lake house was where his mother and I had spent 20 summers. There was a silence on his end. "Wait," Daniel said, "how much are we talking? Like, you're saying you have nothing?" "I have about $12,000 in a checking account," I said, "and a truck that's worth maybe $4,000 if I'm lucky." Another silence. I heard him exhale. "Dad, that's okay. Okay, I need to think about this. Do you have somewhere to stay? Like, temporarily?" "I was hoping," I said carefully, "that maybe I could come to Chicago for a little while, just until I figure out next steps. I wouldn't be in the way. I could sleep on the couch." The pause that followed was longer than any pause a son should need before answering that question. "The thing is," Daniel said, "I've got a really critical project right now. Henderson and Cross, these are major clients, Dad, and I have a site visit in Milwaukee next week, and the week after that I'm presenting to the partners. It's just terrible timing." I said I understood. "Have you looked into, there are resources, right, for seniors in your situation, like transitional housing programs. I can research it if you want. I can't have my focus split right now. You understand, this project could define the next 5 years of my career." I said I understood again. "Send me your checking account number," he said. "I'll wire you $500, just to help with gas, or whatever." The $500 arrived 40 minutes later. I did not touch it. I waited 2 days, and then I called Christine. She answered on the second ring, which surprised me. She usually let it go to voicemail and texted back. "Dad, I was just thinking about you. What's going on?" I told her the same story. Word for word, almost. Except I let my voice break a little earlier because Christine had always responded more to emotion than to facts. I mentioned her mother once, how this would have devastated her, seeing what had become of everything we had built, and I heard Christine make a small sound. "God, Dad, that's awful. I'm so sorry." "I don't know what I'm going to do," I said. "I'm 68 years old and I'm looking at starting completely over." "Okay," she said. I could hear her mind working. Christine was always practical. "So what do you need? Like, what's the actual immediate need?" "I need somewhere to stay," I said. "My lease on the lake house ends in 3 weeks. I thought maybe even just the guest room, for a month or two while I figure out the next step." The silence from Christine was different than Daniel's. Daniel's silence had been calculating. Christine's silence was something else. It was the silence of someone who has already made a decision and is figuring out how to phrase it. "Dad, you know I would love that in theory," she began. "But my place is genuinely tiny. You've never been here, but it's a 1-bedroom, and I work from home 3 days a week, and honestly, the setup is just not—" "Christine," I said gently, "it's okay. No, but listen, what if we found you something more permanent? Like a senior living community? Some of those are really nice now, Dad. They're not like what you're picturing. I looked into one for Aunt Margaret before she passed, and some of them are basically like resorts." She spent 11 minutes telling me about senior living communities, amenities, social programming, transportation services. She had clearly Googled this during the pause. Before we hung up, she sent me $200 through Zelle and a link to a website called seniorlivingoptions.com. I sat in the leather chair for a long time after that call. The snow had stopped. The workshop was very quiet. The following Monday, I packed a single bag, the kind I used to take on one-night business trips, and I drove the truck to a budget inn off Route 9, 20 miles from Millbrook. I paid cash for 3 nights. I did not tell my children where I was. I wanted to see how long it would take any of them to check. It took Daniel 4 days to send a text that said, "Hope you're doing okay. Things have been insane here. How are you holding up?" Christine texted on day 6. "Thinking of you. Have you looked at those communities I sent? Some have January openings." Marcus called on Tuesday, the regular Tuesday call. He did not know anything yet. "Hey, Dad, what's going on? You sound different." "I'm all right," I said. "You don't sound all right." A pause. "You eating okay? It's getting cold up there." "I'm managing," I said. He let it sit for a moment. Marcus had always known when to push and when to wait. It was a quality I had never quite managed to teach him. He had simply arrived with it. "You want to come over Sunday?" he said. "Patty's making her pot roast. Owen's been asking about you. He wants to show you this fort he built in the backyard." "Maybe," I said. "Not maybe. Come Sunday." I almost told him everything then. Instead, I said I would try, and we hung up, and I sat in the budget inn room with its thin blanket and its humming heater and its view of a gas station parking lot, and I felt the particular weight of a thing I had set in motion and could not yet stop. I want to be clear about something. I was not homeless. I had $12,000 in a checking account and a man named Gerald Price who could have ended the whole situation with a phone call. The discomfort I was experiencing was chosen. I knew that, but I also knew something else, that the truth I was looking for could only be found by going all the way to the edge of it. Half measures would have given me half answers, and I was 68 years old and I had lived on half answers long enough. On the 8th day, I drove to Grover Falls. I had not planned to. I had told myself I would wait until Sunday, until the pot roast in Owen's fort and the warmth of a normal Tuesday brother evening. But it was a Thursday, and it was 17 degrees, and the budget inn heater had started making a sound like something was dying inside it, and I found myself driving Marcus's street without quite deciding to. His truck was in the driveway. The lights in the house were on. Through the front window, I could see the blue flicker of a television. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes. I almost left twice. Then I got out and knocked. Marcus answered the door in a flannel shirt and work socks, and when he saw me really looked at me, something shifted in his face. I do not know exactly what he read there. I had not slept well in 8 days. I had eaten mostly gas station food. I had been carrying something heavy without anywhere to put it down. "Dad," he said. Not a question. Just my name, the way you say someone's name when you are absorbing something. "I didn't want to bother you," I started. He opened the door wider. "Get in here." Patty came out of the kitchen, and when she saw me, she did not ask questions either. She just said, "I'll make soup," and went back in. That was the entirety of her response to finding her father-in-law unexpectedly at the door on a Thursday night in December. She went and made soup. Marcus sat me down at the kitchen table, the same kind of scratched wooden table my own parents had, the kind that has lived through 10,000 meals and will outlive everyone who ever sat at it, and he put a mug of coffee in front of me. "Tell me," he said. And so I told him. The story. Not the real one. Not yet. The cover story. The lawsuit, the firm, the money, all of it gone. I told it carefully. I watched his face the whole time. Marcus did not interrupt. He did not reach for his phone. He did not calculate. He sat across the table from me in his flannel shirt, and he listened, and when I finished he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Where have you been staying?" "A motel off Route 9. His jaw tightened, just slightly. "How long?" 8 days. He looked at me for a long moment. "Why didn't you call me?" "I didn't want to." "Dad." His voice was even, not angry, just certain. "You call me, whatever it is. You call me, okay?" I nodded. My throat felt strange. Owen appeared in the doorway then, in pajamas with rockets on them, holding a stuffed dog he had owned since he was 2. He looked at me with the uncomplicated delight that 7-year-olds have for grandparents. "Grandpa Robert, are you sleeping over?" Marcus looked at me. "Yeah, buddy," he said. "Grandpa's going to stay with us for a while." I looked at my son. "Marcus, I can't take your—" "You're not taking anything." He stood up and picked Owen up and settled him on his hip like it was nothing, the easy physical confidence of a man who uses his body for work every day. "You'll take our room. Me and Patty will take the couch." "Absolutely not. Give me the couch." "You've got a bad back and you're 68 years old. You're taking the room." He said it the way he said everything, with a quiet finality that left no actual room for argument. Patty called from the kitchen that the soup was ready. We ate at the scratch table, the 4 of us 5. Once little Rose padded in half asleep and climbed into my lap and immediately fell back asleep with her head against my chest, which meant I ate the rest of my soup one-handed and did not mind at all. After the kids were back in bed, Marcus and I sat at the table with the last of the coffee, and he asked me what I needed. Practically. He wanted to make a list. He actually got out a notepad, We need to figure out your income situation. Social Security, what are you drawing? Enough to manage, I said. Okay. And the truck is yours, free and clear? Yes. Okay. He wrote something down. I've been thinking about expanding the business, taking on residential remodeling, not just plumbing. I could use someone with your background for the structural assessments. Nothing crazy, just reviewing plans, talking to clients. I'd pay you for it. Before you say anything, I need it, and you know this field better than anyone I could hire. I looked at him. It's not charity, he said, reading me correctly. I genuinely need it. Gil doesn't know anything about load-bearing walls, and I'm tired of guessing. I almost ended it there. I want you to know that. I almost told him the truth at that kitchen table, with the last of the coffee going cold between us, in that house with the children asleep down the hall and the snow beginning again outside the window. I almost said, Marcus, put down the notepad. I need to tell you something. But I knew that if I did, I would never know the rest. There was still something I needed to see. The next morning, while Marcus was on a job and Patty was at school where she taught second grade, I called Gerald Price. It's time, I said. Gerald had prepared for this moment with the same quiet thoroughness he applied to everything. He made 2 calls. He sent one certified letter to Daniel's Chicago address, and one to Christine's Atlanta address. The letters informed them that their father's estate attorney, Gerald H. Price of Price and Associates, was requesting their presence at a meeting in Millbrook, Ohio, the following Saturday, regarding the finalization of the Calloway family estate. The letters did not say I was dead. They did not say I was alive. They said estate finalization and gave an address, and I have spent some time since then thinking about what it says about my older children that both of them got in their cars and drove to Millbrook without once calling me to ask if I was all right. They arrived within 20 minutes of each other on a cold Saturday morning. Daniel in a charcoal coat that probably cost $800. Christine in a cream-colored puffer jacket and heeled boots that were ridiculous for December in Ohio. They met each other in the driveway of the lake house, which I had quietly arranged to use for the morning, and they came inside together. I was sitting in the living room. The look on their faces when they saw me standing in the living room of my own house, alive, dressed, calm, was something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Not with satisfaction. I want to be precise about that. It was not triumph I felt. It was something more complicated and harder to name. Marcus was standing beside me. He had come because I had called him that morning and told him there was something he needed to be part of. I had not told him what it was, and to his credit he had not asked. Dad, Christine said. Her hand went to her chest. We thought. I know what you thought, I said. Please sit down. Gerald came in from the kitchen, where he had been waiting, and he sat at the table with his briefcase and his reading glasses and his careful manner, and when everyone was seated, he opened the briefcase and he began. He explained, in the measured language of a man who has delivered difficult news for 30 years, that the financial crisis I had described to my children was not real, that the firm was intact, that the assets were intact, that my estate stood at approximately $4.2 million, including the firm's valuation, the property, and the investment accounts. He explained that several months ago I had executed a new will, and he explained what that will contained. Daniel's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Christine's face went very still. Marcus looked at me. I looked back at him. He tilted his head slightly a question, and I nodded. Gerald laid out the terms. Marcus, who had given me his bed and his kitchen table and a mug of coffee and a notepad with a list of practical solutions, who had offered me work not as charity, but as the real thing it was, would receive the primary residence from the Lake House estate and the retirement accounts, totaling approximately $2.8 million. He would also receive full ownership of Calloway and Associates, to do with as he chose. Daniel and Christine would each receive $400,000, with no conditions. I had chosen no conditions for them deliberately. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because I had decided that I did not want conditions to be the reason they examined what had happened. Conditions would have given them something to comply with. I did not want compliance. That is the difference between a lesson and a transaction. Daniel was the first to speak. Dad, he started. His voice had a quality I had not heard in a long time, something stripped of its usual assurance. I'm not angry, I said. It was true. I need you to know that. I'm not angry at either of you. Then why? Because I needed to know. I looked at both of them. Your mother has been gone for 6 years, and in those 6 years I have had occasion to wonder, sometimes late at night, what I actually was to you. Not as a source of things, but as a person, a father, a man who might one day need something from you. And I discovered I didn't know the answer, so I looked for it. Christine's eyes were bright. She pressed her lips together. I found the answer, I said. The room was quiet. Outside, Owen and Rose were in the backyard with Patty. Through the window, I could see the kids running circles in the snow, their breath making small clouds, entirely unconcerned with anything happening inside. I was glad they were out there. Children should be outside in the snow. I don't think you're bad people, I said to Daniel and Christine. I think you got busy and then you got used to being busy, and then the busyness became the whole story. I think you told yourselves that because you had made something of your lives, you had somehow discharged the rest of it. The older obligations. I paused. Your mother would have found a gentler way to say this. I'm saying it the way I know how. Daniel looked at the table. Christine reached up and pressed her fingers to the corner of her eye. The money is yours, I said. All of it, whatever Gerald has assigned you. I'm not taking it back. But I am asking something from you that doesn't have a dollar amount. I'm asking you to think about what happened these past 2 weeks. Not as a judgment I've made on you, but as information about who you have been and who you might decide to be. Nobody said anything for a while. It was Marcus who broke the silence. He did it the way he did most things, simply, without announcement. I didn't know either, he said. He was not looking at Daniel or Christine. He was looking at me. I didn't know it was a test. I just thought my dad was in trouble. He said it without any note of superiority. It was not aimed at his siblings. It was just a fact he was laying down, the way a man lays down a tool he has finished using. I thought my dad was in trouble, and so this is what I did. I think that was the moment. Not the reading of the will, not the reveal. This moment, my son, in his flannel shirt and work boots, sitting at a table in my lake house and saying a plain, true thing. Daniel looked at Marcus. Something moved across his face. I know, he said quietly. It was not an apology. Not yet. But it was something real, and real things have to start somewhere. In the months that followed, things changed in ways I had not entirely predicted. Daniel called more. Not constantly, he was still Daniel, still the man with the important project and the expensive coat, but he called. And more importantly, when he called, he asked about me rather than informing me about himself. Small shift. Enormous difference. He came to Millbrook in February and spent a weekend, and on Saturday morning he and Marcus worked together replacing some rotted boards on the lake house deck, and I sat in a camp chair in the cold and watched my 2 sons work side by side, and I thought about their mother and how she had always believed they were capable of this. Christine took longer. She is the one most like me, which is perhaps why it is the most difficult between us. She sent a long email in January that I have read many times. It was not a perfect email. It had some defensiveness in it, and some reaching for justifications that I found unconvincing, but it also had toward the end a paragraph that I think cost her something real to write, and I respect that cost. We have been talking more since then. Real talking, the kind where both people say things that are slightly uncomfortable. It is better than gift cards. Marcus and Patty used part of the estate to put a proper roof on their house finally, and to replace the truck, and to start a college fund for Owen and Rose. Marcus hired a second full-time plumber and took on his first residential remodeling contract using Callaway & Associates structural certification. He asked me to come to the first client consultation. I wore a tie. He told me I didn't have to wear a tie. I wore it anyway. I still sit in the leather chair by the window sometimes. The workshop is quieter now than it used to be, but it is a different kind of quiet, the kind that has been earned. In the evenings, Owen calls me on the phone. He has been allowed to use the family tablet to video call, and he shows me whatever he is currently building or drawing or obsessing over. Last week it was a diagram of a fort he wants to build in the backyard when it warms up. He wanted to know if the design was structurally sound. I told him we would need to discuss load distribution and proper anchoring, and that he should bring his diagram on Sunday so I could consult in person. He said, "Okay, Grandpa, you can be the engineer. I'll be the boss." I thought that sounded about right. I have been asked by Gerald, by a couple of old colleagues who found out pieces of the story, whether I regret it, whether I would do it again. It is not a simple question. I did something that caused real pain to people I love. The ends do not automatically justify the means, and I am old enough to know that anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. What I will say is this. I came out the other side knowing the answer to a question that had kept me awake for 6 years. I know what I am to my children, not as an abstraction, not as something I hope for or assume. I know it the way you know the load capacity of a beam tested, measured, real. And I know that on a cold Thursday night in December, when I knocked on a door with nowhere else to go, someone opened it wider and said, "Get in here," and went to make soup, and got out a notepad, and did not ask for anything in return. That is the thing I carry, not the $4 million, not the will, not even the lessons that Daniel and Christine may or may not have absorbed, which are theirs to work out in their own time. Just a door opening. Just get in here. Just soup. If you have people in your life who would open the door, and I mean really open it, all the way, without calculating what it costs them first, then you have something that no lawsuit, no audit, no market downturn can ever take from you. Hold on to them. Tell them, while you still can, what they are worth to you. Don't wait for a cold night and a door you're not sure will open. I waited too long, and I got lucky. Not everyone does.